Hey there, today Omar and I from class 9A are going to perform our project about earthquakes. However, we are specifically going to focus on one earthquake that has occurred in California on 2019, the 4th to the 5th of July. Now, these are the fault lines in California. And if you could notice, this map has given you a legend describing where the fault lines are. And as you can see, there are many major fault lines, like it says. That being said, we should know that earthquakes happen more along tectonic plate boundaries or faults. And the fact that California has many major faults, it explains why it is more vulnerable to earthquakes. A major earthquake has once occurred in California at one of the most major fault zones called the San Andreas Fault. This earthquake was called the Ridgecrest earthquake, which occurred along the San Andreas Fault. The Ridgecrest was in fact a set of earthquakes. However, we are specifically talking about one earthquake that has caused a lot of damage with a 7.1 magnitude. This earthquake has occurred on a transform boundary along the fault, where the Pacific plate slides northwestward relative to the Northern American plate. As the North American and Pacific plates slid roughly past each other, they have caused sudden shifts in relief of tensions and stress, which has released it as energy in the form of shakes as earthquakes. That being said, sudden relief and release of incredible energy has caused a 7.1 magnitude earthquake that has caused a lot of damage on the July 4th, 2019 at 10:34 a.m. local time, as to which more than 47,000 people in Southern California and as far away as Northern California died. Having such huge natural disasters makes me wonder, what causes these earthquakes? What is the driving force of these earthquakes? We might know that there are sudden shifts and the release of energy. However, what causes this release of energy? Maybe the plates move, but how do they move? We all know tectonic plates move in three types of movements: divergently, convergently, and transformingly. However, what causes these movements? How do they occur? Well, a short answer to that would be heat and gravity are fundamental to that process. When it comes to heat, it's just the factor that is called the mantle convection that causes tectonic plates to move. However, what really is mantle convection? From the name itself, mantle convection is just the process of where the lower mantle gets heated by the core and then gets less dense, leading it to rise up and replace itself by cooler upper mantle. Less dense mantle keeps replacing the denser mantle as it forms a circular motion, causing tectonic plates to move. Similarly, along the San Andreas Fault, which stretches across California, a transform motion has occurred, making a transform boundary between two plates, that is the North American plate and the South Pacific plate. These plates slide past each other on a transform motion. However, the transform movement isn't easily occurring. There is stress that is prevented by friction, and it suddenly is released to form a earthquake. The second major factor that affects tectonic plate movement is gravity, mainly in subduction at convergent boundaries. You see in this picture, one plate subducts under the other, which is caused by gravity, obviously. Along this subduction zone, the denser lithosphere always subducts, and that is usually the oceanic crust. This is because oceanic crust always gets renewed into new and denser plates. However, continental crust doesn't get renewed and it always remains old as it is less dense. However, when a convergent boundary occurs along two oceanic plates, it really is just about the age, whereas the older one always stays on top where the newer one always subducts as it is denser. That being said, the two main driving forces of tectonic plate movement is heat from mantle and gravitational pull. That being said, that is it for my part, and these are my sources.
I am Omar Ahmed from grade 9A, and I will be taking the presentation from this moment. Earthquakes are movements of the ground caused by sudden release of energy when rocks along a fault move or slip into new positions. A fault is a break or a fracture on Earth's surface. Earthquakes occur as a result of elastic rebound. Elastic rebound is the sudden return of elastically deformed rock into its undeformed shape. Elastic rebound occurs in a series of logical steps. At first, two blocks of crust are pressed against each other at fault, although they are under stress, but they don't move because friction holds them in place. As stress builds up at a fault, the crust deforms. When the rock is stressed to a point that it can't maintain, it fractures. When the rock fractures, it separates at the weakest point and rebounds into its original shape, causing an earthquake. This is the process of elastic rebound that causes earthquakes. California. Earthquakes usually occur at California because it lies on the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault extends 800 miles through California. Faults are areas where two tectonic plates come together. It forms the tectonic boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. The San Andreas Fault divides into three segments, each with different characteristics and a different degree of earthquake risk. The most significant one is the southern segment that passes about 35 miles of Los Angeles. So the main reasons why earthquakes occur in California is because of the San Andreas Fault that causes earthquakes to form as a result of movements. Which plates are interacting in what ways in California? The San Andreas Fault. Two of the moving plates meet in Western California. The boundary between them is the San Andreas Fault. The Pacific Plate on the west moves northward relative to the North American Plate on the east, causing earthquakes along the fault, the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault is a transform plate boundary that develops where the Pacific Plate moves northward past the North American Plate, causing earthquakes along the fault, the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault is just one of the several faults that accommodate the transform motion between the Pacific and the North American plates. The North American Plate and the Pacific Plate are the two plates in California that break, causing earthquakes. The Pacific Plate moves northwestward relative to a North American Plate. These two plates cause earthquakes in the San Andreas Fault by movements along one another by moving past each other. Last recent earthquake that occurred in California was in July 2019. The Ridgecrest earthquakes in Southern California that hit on July 4 and July 5 with a magnitude of 6.4 and 7.1. The Ridgecrest earthquakes is the most recent major earthquake in California. The 7.1 magnitude earthquake lasted 12 seconds and was felt by 30 million people. Damage.com estimated for the 2019 Ridgecrest earthquake was about $1 billion in damage according to the U.S. Geological Survey, and it resulted in 1 death, 25 injuries, 20 on July 4 and 5 on July 5. Each year, the California area has about 10,000 earthquakes. Most of them are so small that they aren't felt. Only several hundred are greater than the magnitude of 3.0. Only 15 to 20 have a greater magnitude than 4.0. Although most of California's quakes are small in magnitude and cause little or no damage, California experiences more than 100 per day. The average magnitude of California's earthquakes are 5.5 and higher, and they cause about $200 million in damage each. For now, I will be explaining ways to plan ahead before an earthquake and what should be included in the disaster kit before an earthquake. And my friend, my partner, Mohamed Amer, will be explaining the different hazards caused by earthquakes and how to avoid them. Ways to plan ahead before an earthquake include: before an earthquake, at first you have to take some time to prepare yourself and your loved ones from a possible earthquake, as one can hit at any time. Being prepared with necessary tools will likely ease your nerves and make your life better during that earthquake and during that disaster. Before an earthquake, you have to familiarize yourself with the location of fire extinguishers, medical kits, exit routes, and your building's evacuation plan. You have to have a necessary house repairs fixed to avoid further damage. You have to secure heavy furniture and hanging objects. You have to store harmful chemicals and flammable materials properly. You have to prepare your survival kit. You have to take care of your kids and family and teach them first aid techniques and how to call 911 just in case. You have to participate in office and community earthquake drills, and you have to learn simple first aid techniques to survive during an earthquake. Other ways to prepare for an earthquake before an earthquake include planning a location to meet your family in case of an emergency, and also know the locations of the nearest fire and police stations, and also locate the shot of valves for water, gas, and electricity. Also, one necessary thing is that our families need to learn to stay away from glass, windows, outside doors and walls, and anything that could fall, such as lighting fixtures or furniture. After an emergency, you may need to survive on your own for several days. Being prepared means having your own food, water, and other supplies to last for several days. Basic disaster kit supplies for an earthquake include non-perishable or no prep meals that include canned goods, crackers, cereal, canned juices, and so on. First aid kit that includes bandages, scissors, blankets, tweezers, and splint, aspirin, cold packs, antibiotic ointment, thermometer, and safety pins. Clothes, toiletries like bath soap, pads, toothbrush, toothpaste, and so on. Important documents like passports, birth certificates, and whatever else important that you need to move on with your life, not to lose during an earthquake. Essential tools like lights, matches, flashlights, batteries, phones, any tool for entertainment for children and kids are all important during an earthquake. As for now, I will be explaining the hazards caused by an earthquake, not my friend Mohamed Amer. The type of hazard caused by an earthquake depends on the strength of seismic activity, along with such factors as local topographic and built features, subsurface geology, and groundwater. A large earthquake will always be followed by a sequence of aftershocks. Hazards caused by an earthquake include ground shaking. If an earthquake generates a large enough shaking intensity, structures like buildings, bridges, and dams can be severely damaged. Tsunamis. A number of waves may be produced as they travel long distances at high speeds to flood far off shores. The height of a tsunami varies and may be affected by the seafloor depth and shape and other factors. Landslides and rockfalls. Ground shaking due to the earthquakes destabilizes cliffs and steep slopes, causing landslides and rockfalls as significant side effect. That is a hazard caused by an earthquake, and it affects us human beings. Liquefaction. Liquefaction occurs when waterlogged sediments are agitated by seismic shaking. This separates the grains from each other, reducing their load-bearing capacity. Buildings and other structures can sink down into the ground or tilt over. We could prevent these dangers by identifying hazards, which we could prepare by building safer structures and providing education on earthquake safety. Even though we humans can't stop nature from happening, but we could still provide some help to reduce the pain that will be caused by these disasters. Thank you guys for listening, and me and Mohamed Amer, we have completed this earthquake project, and we have answered all of the questions in the best way possible so far. The sources I used is the Holt McDougall textbook, eqcountry.com, instructure.com, earthq3.com, Wikipedia, conversation.ca.gov.com, usgs.gov.com, gns.cri.nz.com, National Geographic, and cof.org.com. Thank you guys for listening once again, and I hope you enjoyed.